In this video, we are continuing with quadrilaterals on the coordinate plane. So if you don't have a piece of blank paper right now, you should pause the video and get one. And we're going to go through a flow chart that will kind of explain the process for deciding what kind of quadrilateral that you have. So the first step that we're going to do, and you may want to turn your paper sideways and start in the upper left corner, is you're going to graph all points. Okay, so this is where we're going to start. All right, now once we graph all the points, we are going to find the slope of all sides and diagonals. So for a quadrilateral, this is going to be 4 sides and 2 diagonals. So you're going to find 6 slopes. All right, so now once you have the slopes of all the sides and the diagonals, you can start comparing the slopes of the sides and the diagonals. So if only one pair of opposite sides parallel, so if you only have one pair of opposite sides parallel, then we end up with a trapezoid. So here's our path to the trapezoid. Now keep in mind that if none of the opposite sides are parallel, then it would just be a quadrilateral. So we're not going to have this on the chart, but if there's no special relationships between the slopes of the sides or the diagonals, then it's just going to be a quadrilateral. All right, so if there's more than one pair of sides parallel, so let's go down here. If both pair of opposite sides parallel, so we know that that's going to be a parallelogram. So right now we're just working on comparing the slopes of the sides. So we've got one pair of opposite sides parallel, trapezoid, both pair of opposite sides parallel, parallelogram, and we have to keep working. So now let's look at the slopes of the consecutive sides. So if it's a parallelogram, then it also has the possibility of being a rectangle or a rhombus or a square. So we have to look at that as well. So if it's a parallelogram and if consecutive sides are perpendicular, so if we take our parallelogram and we make it so the consecutive sides are perpendicular, meaning slopes are opposite reciprocals, meaning that they're right angles, then we know that it is a rectangle. So we figured out that both pair of opposite sides were parallel and that the consecutive sides or adjacent sides, this is also adjacent, we use both words, adjacent sides are perpendicular, then we know it's a rectangle. However, if we compare the slopes of the diagonals, and if it's a parallelogram, and if diagonals are perpendicular. Again, if the diagonals are perpendicular, then the slopes of the diagonals are going to be opposite reciprocals. So now we had a parallelogram and we checked the slopes of the diagonals and found that the diagonals were perpendicular. Then it also has to be a rhombus. So here's our rhombus. Now, if both pair of opposite sides are parallel and consecutive sides are perpendicular and the diagonals are perpendicular, then that means it has to be, so it's got all of this stuff, then it's going to be a square. So our square has got all of these properties. Let's make a big star around this one. So there's our square. And this is our flow chart. So you can kind of follow these steps. After you find the 6 slopes, then you can start comparing them and determine, is it a parallelogram, is it a rhombus, is it a rectangle, is it a square, was it just a trapezoid? And then we'll add in one more here. No special relationships that gives us just a plain old quadrilateral. Okay. So the basic idea here, find the 6 slopes and determine if pairs are the same, which would mean sides parallel, or opposite reciprocals, which would mean sides perpendicular. All right, so that's it. So when you go ahead and start doing your next assignment for this topic, have this chart handy and see if it helps you figure out what kind of quadrilateral you have. I know it seems like a lot of information, but after you do a whole bunch of problems, it will get easier for you. And then, as always, make sure you ask questions and get help when you need it. All right, we'll see you in the next one.